When the new Gotham Knights game was announced, there was some speculation as to whether or not Warner Bros. Would finally add the Nemesis system into a Batman game. Now that it's confirmed that they haven't done that, I'm going to explain how A, that's a huge missed opportunity by them, and B, how putting that system into a Batman game would actually work. In a basic sense. I'm not going to design a full game here. Yet. So, quick background to start. Who is Batman? Well, if you don't know that by now, I really can't help you. But the Batman Arkham games are some of the best comic book inspired games out there. It leverages not only the cool rogues gallery of villains that Batman has, but it also introduces an engaging combat system along with some pretty tight stealth gameplay. The Nemesis system, however, isn't super well known, but it was introduced in the Lord of the Rings games Shadow of Mordor and its sequel, Shadow of War. These games were shockingly good, largely in part because of the Nemesis system. Warner Bros. Quickly put that under lock and key so no one could steal it, and then promptly did absolutely nothing with it. The Nemesis system, in short, is just an evolving system of nemesises. Nemesis. In the Shadow games, you are fighting numerous orcs, with certain ones being captains with randomized looks and personalities. If one of these orcs kills you, it rises through the ranks and becomes your nemesis, taunting you whenever you cross paths again.
Don't learn, do you? How does dying at my hands lead you to think you can take a fortress from me?
This can happen with any orc that kills you, not just captains, even the no-name ones should they land the killing blow on you. But this isn't just about being taunted every time you die. The system makes it feel like you are exerting some kind of control over the world and its story, making that adventure unique to you through your actions or mishaps. It's an engaging and amazing system because it makes death and failure part of the game instead of a temporary setback. With this kind of system, you can grab an orc, make him your spy, have him work his way up to become the bodyguard of a keep boss, have him help you kill that boss, make him the new boss, and then when he betrays you down the line, you can break his mind, recruit him back again, and make him your bodyguard. It's all based on the kind of story that you want to have told in that game, and it's so satisfying. So why have there been cries and calls to have this sort of system implemented in a Batman game? Well, mainly because Warner Bros. Owns the rights to both and isn't likely to share the rights to either anytime soon. Other than that, there are already a lot of similarities between the two games. A moody protagonist, the combat system, the stealth, the kind of open world, the gadgets, the emphasis on beating up a lot of over-the-top baddies, you name it. Obviously, a one-to-one copy of the Shadow games over to Batman would be the easiest, but that doesn't necessarily work for a few reasons. Number one, it's lazy, and Batman frankly deserves better than that. Number two, Batman doesn't kill, and that kind of puts a huge limiter on things. Reason 3 is, unlike the Shadow protagonist, Batman isn't immortal. He may seem like it sometimes, but he's not. My version of the game is basically Batman Year 1. This would see Batman at the start of his career in Gotham, from a different multiverse, which allows us to introduce new types of villains and alter the world if we need to. It would play similarly to Arkham Knights, where you are able to traverse the city rooftop to rooftop, only maybe with a few more citizens in it. Like the aforementioned orcs, certain criminals you run into would be special and have randomized visual characteristics and personalities. This would put a cool twist on the villains that we are traditionally used to seeing. It wouldn't, for example, be a typical Joker character that pops up into your game, but there would be a few variations of the clown archetype. Of course, there would be the standard crazy clown, a sad one perhaps, maybe an acrobatic one, a nightmare clown like all clowns, etc. What this means is that you wouldn't run into clones of the classic Batman villains, but fun variations that feel a little more unique to your game. These common criminals can elevate themselves to true villain status in a few different ways, either by defeating you, succeeding in some sort of mission-based massive criminal undertaking, or, and most likely, by getting beat by Batman. Let me explain that last point a bit. In any given fight, a criminal can be altered randomly by something that happens in that altercation. Maybe it's an environmental classic, like they fall into a vat of chemicals, or get sprayed in the face with some kind of toxins from the pipes, or maybe they just go insane by having Batman hit them in the head with a batarang. Whatever it is, it's something to do with the fight or mission you're on that makes them the supervillain, so you'll never know when it's going to happen, but when it does, you will now have a certain connection to that new foe. When a baddie does become upgraded in this manner, they are granted some sort of new over-the-top look, more powers, a bigger crew of thematic thugs, and some kind of home base or lair. You will now have missions to try to take out the new threat and stop them before they become even more powerful. They could even clash with other gangs and vie for territory. The world state can change anytime Batman is beaten, and beaten doesn't necessarily mean dying. He can either retreat, get rescued, or simply get left to die because villains would rather monologue instead of delivering that killing blow. This would put Batman out of commission for a while he recovers or alters his plans. This is what would lead to a shakeup of the world in his absence, keeping the villains and their gangs ever changing. To ensure that some defeats do happen, because some people are just too good to die, when a new villain type emerges, let's say like a Mr. Freeze, Batman will suffer a defeat because he lacks the proper means to deal with him. The recovery time here would lead to the discovery of new gadgets, which Batman will need to take down the ever-growing types of villains he has to face. Alright, so that's a neat idea for the villains, but how would all of this actually fit into a game? What is the story here? Well, for the main story, the best option would probably be to use the Court of Owls. They are basically the new Joker and how popular they have become recently, and here, honestly, it fits perfectly. The Court will be the ones that are encouraging the rise of these more over-the-top villains in an attempt to overwhelm this new Batman threat. As Batman cracks down on different villains and their gangs, he will uncover more about the Court of Owls, leading to a final showdown between him and some of the more iconic villains you've encountered throughout your playthrough. And, just saying, the Court of Owls has in the past used undead assassins, so this could give Batman an excuse to go to town in a more hardcore way on some of these minions. And it also gives an excuse for some defeated villains to come back should they somehow die. One of the many cool things about the Shadow games is that you can recruit orcs to fight for you. This would need some kind of tweaking because recruiting an army of thugs isn't really something Batman would do. He much prefers orphan children. If we wanted to keep this element in the game, and I do because it's fun, he could intimidate these villains into becoming informants for him, to act as a way to gain intel on the Court of Owls or disrupt their plans from within. It would also be amazing if you could convince some of these villains to sort of turn down a more righteous path, becoming vigilante heroes like yourself or anti-heroes like Catwoman. These could then become allies that you could send off on their own missions or help you out in a pinch or fight gangs while you're busy elsewhere. Or, of course, they could totally betray you and become an even bigger threat down the line. But even if they did, this would add to the story, add to your own personal narrative. One thing we need to address is that in Shadow, you are cutting down orcs left and right. But since Batman doesn't kill, we'll need to think of another way villains can get shuffled around outside of Batman getting taken out of commission. I think this is a pretty easy one to work around because these main villains can get incapacitated through stealth, as Batman does, or they can get taken out with serious injuries because he has no qualms with that. They could also get scared off due to intimidation tactics, or even more likely, they can just get thrown in Arkham. Any of these options still allow villains to come back in a variety of interesting ways to ambush or surprise you throughout your game. That's it. That's how you could not only bring the Nemesis system into a Batman game and make it work, but that's how you could even build a complete narrative around it. I think it would make for one hell of a game, and I have never been more excited about a game I am sure is never going to exist. If you have ideas on how something like this might work, share them with me, because I'd love to hear them. Anyways, thank you for listening to me ramble about a game idea I had, and thanks for letting me talk gaming.